Today, I take on some OP mini-bosses, set myself up a mob farm, explore the very dangerous Nether, and even take a trip to the surface for my biggest challenge yet. Also, if you end up enjoying this video, please consider subscribing to my channel so that you don't miss any future uploads. So on day 101, I immediately got started by adding some new friends to my underground bunker. And the first of these friends was a straw golem, which is something that I'm actually surprised I didn't make in the first 100 days, considering you literally just need some hay bales and a pumpkin to make it. This little guy though is actually super useful because not only will he harvest the plants for you, but he will also automatically find a place to store them. For some reason though, my straw golem seemed to be a bit buggy because as soon as he harvested my hemp, he would not let it go. As many of you pointed out in the comment section of my original 100 days though, hemp does have a sibling crop, which perhaps explains why this little guy didn't want to let it go. Anyways, as my second order of business on this first day back in the world, I also decided to craft an item called the Cocoon of Caprice, which when placed will hatch into a random animal after 2 minutes, which was actually going to be super nice for getting my little animal farm restarted because the one chicken I had from the first 100 days had now mysteriously disappeared. Thankfully though, after convincing my new roommate to release his hands off of that hemp crop, I walked over into my little animal pen and saw that the cocoon had hatched into a baby chicken, so it was almost like that death had never even happened. On day 102, I began searching underground for a spawner because I had decided that getting some sort of mob grinder / XP farm set up would be a good idea. As I entered a small dungeon though, I was suddenly ambushed by some sort of drowned mini-boss. Thankfully, I was able to quickly trap it and take it out, and then it dropped a very OP helmet. Yo, look at that! It has adjusted cooling! It has adjusted cooling! Oh my god, dude, you guys, that's so good! That's so good! You guys don't even know how good that is! Oh my god! Wait, and it gives me extra health! I have 2.5 extra hearts now too. Bro, that's broken. As crazy good as that helmet is though, you know what's even better? Today's sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Frag Pro Shooter, one of the best mobile shooter games of 2020. There's already more than 70 million players who've downloaded the game, with over 1 million of them active each and every single day. And if you guys decide to join them, you can use my link down in the description below to get some exclusive rewards on the game. And the rules of the game are really easy to understand. Simply destroy the enemy's tower and bunkers before they do the same to you. And with more than 90 characters currently in the game to collect and upgrade, you can easily make a super unique strategy to destroy your opponents. And Frag Pro Shooter is constantly releasing brand new content for their players. Just recently, they added 2 new characters, Izuna and AO, and by adding these 2 characters to your deck, you'll get a 30% damage buff. Personally, my favorite game mode to play is Street Frag, which is an action-packed and fast-paced 1v1 against your opponent. In this game mode, the map is smaller and the games are much quicker, so even if you only have a few minutes to play, that's plenty of time to get a game in. So if all of that sounds as fun and exciting to you as it did to me, you can click the link down in the description below to get free rewards in-game, even if you've already installed it. So definitely make sure you guys check that out, and thank you once again to Frag for sponsoring today's video. Now, the reason that adjusted cooling enchant is so OP is because it automatically lowers my temperature anytime I start to get too hot, which would be super useful for mining near lava, but even more importantly was going to allow me to eventually explore the Nether without risk of overheating to death. So to demonstrate this new OP enchant I had acquired, I made my way down towards a lava pool. Unfortunately, it turns out that the heat lava gives off is too much even for the adjusted cooling to handle, so it seemed like it was really only going to be useful for that Nether trip. This was admittedly a pretty big letdown, but my disappointment didn't last long because as I was exploring a small cavern nearby, I managed to find a whopping 20 diamonds. And before any of you commenters accuse me of cheating like you did on the last video, keep in mind this is modded Minecraft, which is why I'm able to find diamond veins that are so big. And after making my way back up to my bunker on day 104, I decided to make some more of those animal cocoons. The first one hatched into a sheep, which meant that I now had a great and consistent source of wool. and the second one hatched into a baby cow, which could eventually provide me with a good method of getting leather if I could hatch another one and breed them. On day 105, I got back to my spawner hunt and actually managed to find one inside of a lush cave. I didn't want to just set up a grinder at this location though. I wanted to actually pick up and move this spawner to an area inside of my bunker. So I spent the entirety of the following day just preparing the necessary materials to do just that. Actually getting this spawner into my inventory though was a much more difficult task than I had initially anticipated, because this spawner in particular was a creeper spore spawner, which are these little tiny miniature versions of creepers which are kind of adorable but at the same time very sneaky and very deadly. And as I was trying to get the items I needed to place down, these guys were just non-stop harassing me, making this entire process very nerve-wracking. And to make matters even worse, once I finally got the spawner loaded up into a minecart, my Twitch chat informed me that not only do these little guys not have any sort of loot drops, they also don't even drop XP. Which I guess I probably should have noticed since I killed like 100 of them in the process of trying to pick up the spawner, but nonetheless, it meant that this thing was pretty much entirely useless to me and I was gonna have to keep looking for another spawner. So on day 108, the hunt was back on, and as I continued my exploration, I actually ended up at the place where I had broken a spawner in the first 100 days. So for all of you who commented that I was an idiot for breaking that spawner, well, I guess you were right. Luckily though, by some insane miracle, there happened to be another spawner within just a few blocks of the one I had broken. This one spawned some sort of very fast skeletons that were seemingly pretty dangerous, but beggars can't be choosers, so I picked it up and made my way back to my base. And upon my return, I noticed that my straw golem was rotting and on the precipice of death, so I quickly used some wheat to revive him. Then I made my way over to the ocean and started collecting some kelp, which I was going to be using to create some conveyor belts for my mob farm. Then I threw all of that kelp that I had just gathered into a smoker because it would need to be dried out before I could convert it into conveyor belts. And as the kelp was being smoked, I also began work on actually clearing out the room where I was going to be building the mob farm. But then on the next day, after I had finished excavating the room for the farm, disaster struck when in some sort of freak accident, my straw golem happened to be standing on the exact block a pumpkin grew on, and it didn't end well for him. Thankfully though, like I mentioned earlier, they're pretty easy to craft, so I made another one and pretended like it never even happened. Welcome back, man. It's the same guy, guys. Don't think about it too closely. It's definitely the same guy, right? Anyways, on day 113, I placed down those conveyor belts in the mob farm area and then got to work on crafting some of the other components that I would need to actually power those belts so that they could deliver the mobs that spawned to the area where I was planning on grinding them. And then finally, on day 114, I placed down those components that I had just crafted to give some power to those mechanical belts, and then put the spawner down. And voila, just like that, the grinder was officially working, but I wasn't really satisfied with how it had turned out, so I decided I wanted to make a couple of changes. First, I added in some campfires at the spot where the mobs land to add some automation to the grinder. In the process of adding these though, I accidentally let one of those speedy skeletons escape and had a very intense battle with it, which confirmed my earlier suspicions that these guys were very dangerous. So I was gonna have to be careful not to let too many of these guys escape at once, cause I could be in some serious trouble if I did. Next, I went on a little mining expedition so that I could collect some iron to create some hoppers to put below the campfires. That way, when the skeletons died to the campfires, I could actually collect their drops as opposed to them just despawning. And now that I had a decent mob farm set up that I was satisfied with, I could start work on my next project, the Soul Enchanter, which, as you'll see pretty soon, is basically just a regular enchanting table, but like 100 times more overpowered. And the first step of getting this thing crafted was to perform a little ritual at my mob grinder that would sacrifice all of the mobs that were currently spawned there in exchange for soul shards, which were basically going to be the basis of this whole soul enchanter thing. Then by combining these soul shards with some redstone and gold in a crucible, I was able to create arcane gold, which is one of the main components in crafting the soul enchanter. And one of the other main components in crafting it is obsidian, which I spent the entirety of day 121 trying to collect because I did not learn my lessons from the previous time I collected obsidian and did it in like the most scuffed way possible. And after getting all of the obsidian I needed, I was able to craft the soul enchanter, and this thing is just so overpowered. Because for the cost of just one single soul shard each time you use it, not only can you bypass the usual like level 10, 20, 30 requirements for enchantments, but you can also increase the level of any pre-existing enchants you have on your item. So if you have sharpness 4, for example, for the cost of just 5 XP levels and a soul shard, you can put sharpness 5 on it instead. Which obviously makes the process of maxing out the enchantments on literally any item super easy. So of course, I immediately started using this thing to upgrade pretty much everything I owned. My swords, my tools, my armor, you name it, I was upgrading it with this thing because it's just so cheap to use and can give you such overpowered enchants. And after I was done upgrading, I got started on the next item that this new mob farm was actually going to allow me to craft, called the Focus. And what the Focus does is allow me to take those 3 fire element scrolls I crafted in the first 100 days and combine them all into one item, which would make it a lot easier to use all of them and also just a lot more convenient to store in my inventory. But in order to craft the Focus, I was going to need a lot of earth element, which is something I previously did not have access to. But that's where this new mob farm comes into play, because the skeletons drop earth shards that can be converted directly into earth element. But I needed a lot of that earth element. In fact, I estimated that I was going to need about 100 or so of the earth shards just to have enough to complete this project. And on top of that, I was even going to have to get some of my other types of elements in order to complete this whole thing, so I had some grinding to do. So over the next 4 days, I did exactly that. I grinded a lot of those skeletons in order to get all those earth shards that I needed, and also spent a little bit of time just gathering the other things that were required for the craft as well. And then on day 128, I was able to finally craft the Focus. Only problem now was, in order to actually apply my 3 scrolls to the Focus, I needed an anvil, and I currently didn't have enough iron to craft one. So I headed back down into my mines and collected some iron. And then the next day was able to actually add my scrolls to that Focus. And now by simply crouching and scrolling with the Focus in hand, I could toggle it to any of my fire magic spells. And with that done, I continued to work on making myself even more overpowered, this time by starting work on the expansion of my farm. You see, by using this handy little book, I can actually see my current food diversity level. And every time I hit a food diversity milestone, I either get an increase to my max health or gain some sort of permanent potion effect like strength or speed. And to increase my food diversity, I just needed to eat different types of foods. So I spent the day searching through my storage, trying to find foods that I hadn't yet eaten, or ones that I could combine into some sort of new food. I also crafted an item called the Golden Lunchbox, which if I put all of my food in there, will always choose the food item that gives me the highest diversity bonus. And all of this seemed to be working out really well for me, because by the end of the day, I already had gotten myself to the 3 extra heart threshold. The next day, I placed down another one of those animal cocoons and got a chicken once again, and decided that it might not be a bad idea to breed them and start a little chicken coop, since chickens could be a good source of feathers and food. So I began by creating a new room connected to my small animal pen that I could create the chicken coop in, which should have been super easy to do, but for some reason I had decided to make this animal pen on the side of a mountain cliff, so extending the room out was a bit more convoluted than it probably should have been. And I also didn't want this chicken coop to just be some big ugly dirt box, so I actually spent some time also gathering wood and glass to make it at least look decently good. And after about 3 days or so of work, I had the coop mostly set up. I was having some problems with chickens constantly breaking out of the coop and running away though, so I switched it to a fence with a carpet on top so that I could easily get over it without the chickens being able to do the same. And then, since I was obviously going to want to be breeding these chickens so that I could get more of them in the coop, I decided to expand my wheat farm for easy access to seeds. And then I realized that chickens actually have a really small chance in this mod to drop a rare version of their egg called the rotten egg. And when thrown, that rotten egg can spawn a really powerful creature called the cockatrice, and I kind of wanted to get one of those things. So I figured that it'd be a good idea to set up some sort of system to catch all the eggs in case the chickens happen to drop a rotten egg. And to me, it seemed like the easiest way to do this was just going to be to convert the floor of my chicken coop into hoppers. So I spent the day gathering iron and wood so I could do exactly that. And on the next day, after crafting some hoppers and accidentally killing 3 of my chickens while trying to place them down, I realized I was going to need a lot of iron for this project, so it was back to mining for me. While I was searching underground for more iron though, I found a really interesting spawner that was seemingly spawning 3 different types of mobs. And even though my current mob farm with those skeletons was decent, I could definitely benefit from having another spawner set up. So I used those special tools I had to pick up the spawner and added it into my mob farm on the following day. But since this whole spawner ordeal had kind of distracted me, I still didn't have enough iron for the hoppers I wanted for that chicken coop. So the next 2 days, I spent entirely just mining iron. And after mining so much iron in the span of just those 2 days that I honestly wouldn't be upset if I never had to see a piece of iron again, I finally had the room completely covered in hoppers. I also started to place some carpets over the hoppers so that the room could be a little bit more aesthetically appealing without actually losing its functionality, but once I realized how much wool I was going to need in order to fully cover the room, I decided that project could wait till another time. And with the chicken coop now fully operational, I thought it'd be a good time to start working on improving my setup to prepare for my eventual trip to the surface and that very scary blizzard outside. The first item I crafted in my preparations is called the Sojourner Sash, and this item is pretty dang OP for any type of exploration because not only does it increase your movement speed and jump height, but it also decreases fall damage. So if you happen to fall off a massive cliff or down some sort of giant ravine while you're exploring, then, you know, this thing gives you a little bit of a higher chance to actually survive that. Next up on my list of things to do was to create an armor set that would help me combat the cold temperatures of the surface. And since my current armor set was pretty much designed for the exact opposite of that, in that it had a bunch of enchants that cooled me down on it, I was going to need to make an entirely new armor set to accomplish this goal. So I began by crafting myself a set of armor that consisted of half diamond and half mana steel, and then used my mob farm to get the XP levels I needed to get some basic enchants going on all these armor pieces. And then I made use of that very OP soul enchanter that I crafted earlier in this video to start upgrading all of the enchants that I had on the armor. And during the process of enchanting the helmet, I found out that there's some crazy OP enchant called Scout that literally will highlight mobs that get too close to you, which would be an absolutely huge advantage on the surface where the fog is so dense that even seeing mobs like 2 blocks in front of you is kind of a struggle. On day 146 though, while I was still in the process of enchanting all these armor pieces, I went up to check on my chicken coop and found a couple rotten eggs. Unfortunately though, when I actually threw the eggs, I was not able to spawn a cockatrice, so I was gonna have to wait at least a little bit longer to get one of those awesome animals in my pen. By the next day though, I had started to get really frustrated with this process of enchanting because for some reason I just couldn't get protection on some of these armor pieces. And that's when I realized that I was being a complete and total idiot. Because for the past like 2 or 3 days, I had been trying to enchant armor pieces that had fire and blast protection on them with regular protection, which obviously doesn't work because those are conflicting enchants that can't be on the same armor piece. So then finally on day 148, after realizing this terribly stupid mistake and making the appropriate changes to actually fix it, I now finally had my brand new shiny armor set, and it was looking pretty good. So helmet, we are rocking with protection 4, scout 4, unbreaking 3, chestplate, protection 4, warming 6, unbreaking 3, and then lightweight and tinted. Those don't really matter, those are just on there because I had to like get rid of some enchants from the table. Then leggings, unbreaking 3, warming 6, protection 4. Those are beautiful. Boots, projectile protection 4, lightweight 3, feather falling 4, warming 6, depth strider 1, aerial affinity, unbreaking 2. Yeah, those boots are kind of cracked. But there was really only one way to find out if this new armor set was actually going to be suitable for the surface, and that was to take it out on the surface and see what happens. Now, I wasn't really too concerned as to whether or not Protection 4 was going to be enough to sustain some hits, because if it wasn't, well, there wasn't really a better alternative anyway. But there were 2 things that I was mainly focused on. The first was that Scout enchant on the helmet. I wanted to see if it actually was going to help me spot mobs through that very dense fog on the surface. And to be honest, it worked out super well. There were a bunch of mobs that I encountered up there that probably would have usually snuck up on me, but I was able to identify them easily with that nice white outline provided by the Scout enchant. And the second thing I was paying close attention to is whether or not those warming enchants that I put on every piece of the armor set were going to be enough to keep my temperatures up and stop me from freezing while I was standing directly out in the blizzard. And as far as I could tell, my temperature seemed to be at a pretty balanced level, so To me, it felt like this armor set passed with flying colors. And my day just kept getting better because when I went to check on my chicken coop once again and found some more rotten eggs, I actually was able to spawn a cockatrice this time. And if you think this thing looks cool now, just wait until it starts shooting magic bolts at my enemies to assist me in battle. And now that I was happy with the power level of my armor and weapons, it was time to start exploring. And the place I wanted to begin my exploration at was the caves. Because for the past 150 days, I had been living above a massive cave system that has some really cool ores in it, some really crazy good loot in it, and also some pretty powerful and scary mobs in it. But my hope was with the recent upgrades I had made to my armor and weapons that I could actually take on these scary mobs now. So I did a bit of prep just to make sure I had everything I needed, and then on day 151, I ventured down into the caves. And as I made my way further into the cave, I actually stumbled upon a spider spawner, which I thought would make for a great addition to my mob farm because then I'd have a ton of diversity with skeletons, zombies, and now spiders. So I grabbed my spawner transportation tools and picked up the spawner, but I decided to wait until actually placing the spawner down for now because I'd have to make some adjustments to my mob farm to accommodate for spiders. I also ran into a lava monster in these caves and took him out as revenge for all that harassment those guys had caused me in the first 100 days. And the next day, as I continued to explore these caves, I found one of the main things I had been looking for. Oh, Moonstone! Do you guys see that? At least 2 Moonstone. And if you're wondering like what the heck Moonstone is, it's basically just like Netherite in that it can be added onto diamond armor as an upgrade. But instead of needing only 1 piece, you actually need 8 to create a full block. But it is well worth it because the stats of Moonstone are actually even better than Netherite. And to my surprise, when I went to mine the Moonstone, it actually turned out to be a vein of 4. And since I already had some Moonstone in my base that I had previously found, this meant I could now upgrade one of my diamond armor pieces to Moonstone. For now though, I decided to at least spend one more day inside of these caves in case I could find something else really good before I headed back to my base to upgrade the armor. And I did end up finding this campsite that has the potential to have really good loot in it, but unfortunately the stuff I found wasn't too great. On the following day though, as I was making my way back to my bunker to upgrade my chestplate to Moonstone, I got ambushed by this crazy looking centipede. And when it hit me, it applied a poison effect that started doing damage to me very, very quickly. Thankfully, it seemed to have some troubles navigating the rough terrain in this part of the cave, and I was able to block myself in and start to heal. I made it back to my base on the next day though, and found my cockatrice fully grown and looking super, super awesome. I also, of course, upgraded my diamond chestplate to Moonstone, and that also looked pretty awesome. And then I finished the day by using some of the amber I found in the caves to craft 2 more of those animal cocoons. In the morning, the cocoons hatch, and from one I got a chicken, which wasn't all that interesting, but from the other I got a pig, which was a nice new addition to the farm. But I still wasn't done exploring those caves, because I felt like there had to be some crazy loot just waiting for me down there, so it was time to venture back down. As I made my way into a section of the caverns that I had not yet explored, I spotted what appeared to be a pillager wearing full diamond armor off in the distance. And even though I knew bosses in this mod tended to be pretty powerful, I was feeling pretty confident in my brand new Moonstone chestplate, so I decided to give him a hit and see what happens. And almost immediately, he began to move at a lightning quick speed, and I started to panic a bit. I was able to use my extendo grip and just spam my sword to keep him in a corner, but this was obviously only a temporary solution, and I had to figure out how I was going to either kill this guy or escape him. I started to get in a couple of well-timed hits on him, but then he hit me twice in the span of like 1 second, and I was freaking out. As I started to run away though, he hit me twice again, dropping me down to 2.5 hearts. My heart dropped, and I honestly thought this was going to be the end of my adventure. Somehow though, I was able to pillar up and escape him and breathed a massive sigh of relief. I did still definitely want to kill this boss, because I felt like if he was this strong, he probably was going to drop a pretty good item. But I had learned my lesson from that previous encounter and decided I'd be best to keep this fight ranged. So I switched over to my fire magic wand and shot a fireball at him. And apparently I had gotten him pretty low in that previous fight because he immediately died. And I got super hyped when I ran over there and saw that he had dropped his weapon. Yo, he dropped the sword! Turns out that boss had apparently been destroying me with a sharpness 3 stone sword. But on the bright side, the sword did have an interesting ability where it talked about mobs having a very small chance to explode into a loot pile. So I decided that I would use it to kill the mobs spawning at my farm and see if I could get the ability to proc to find out if it was any good. But because it was only like a 1 in 200 chance of the ability actually proccing, it literally took me 2 full days to finally get it to activate. And when it finally did, it turns out that the mobs unfortunately don't drop any sort of like super cool loot. They just drop a bunch more of their regular drop. So I decided to continue exploring the caves, because even though that last boss fight was absolutely terrifying, it was also kind of fun, so what the heck. And almost immediately, I ran into another one of these named mini-bosses. Thankfully, this one was really easy to take out, and then when I searched the dungeon chest that he was guarding, I found something crazy. Oh! God apple! Oh! Oh my god! Let's go, dude, that's big. And it almost felt like I was living in some sort of loop, because the very next day I found another set of dungeon chests and this happened. Another god apple! Oh my god. I'm getting juiced by the dungeons. So yeah, I had 2 god apples now, which was pretty nice and was probably going to help out if I ever got into another near-death situation. After exploring the caves for the rest of the day though, and not really finding anything else, I decided to head back up to my bunker and work on upgrading my pickaxes, because believe it or not, up until this point, I actually hadn't put fortune on any pickaxe, which in hindsight was kind of stupid. So I applied Fortune 3 to both my Mana Steel pickaxe and my Diamond pickaxe, and in the process of grinding XP, one of the zombies from my mob farm dropped this kind of cool looking miner helmet. I don't think it's going to be of much use to me, but hey, it looks pretty cool. And I also applied some runes that I found during my cave exploration to my sword and pickaxe that added a cool little pink coloration to them, so yeah, that's pretty nice. And then it was time for my next big journey, but this time I wasn't going to be exploring the caves, and I also wasn't going to be exploring the surface quite yet. I was going to be taking a trip to the Nether. And there were 2 main reasons that I wanted to travel to the Nether. The first being that I desperately needed to find a warped forest so that I could start farming Endermen. Because up until this point, I really hadn't seen a lot of them, and as a result, didn't have many pearls, which was going to be a problem when I eventually wanted to travel to the surface in this 200 days, because I needed lots of pearls for a certain item I'll talk about later. On top of that though, I still had yet to brew any potions in this world, so I also thought it might be nice if I could find a fortress in the Nether and get some blazes for blaze rods and also some nether wart. So I spent a little bit of time preparing for this trip, and mainly just wanted to make sure I had that adjusted cooling helmet on me, because obviously that thing was going to be crucial for keeping my temperatures in control. But then it was time for the exploration to begin, and I took about 10 steps before getting ambushed by literally every mob you could possibly imagine. What are these demons? Well, they drop gold nuggets and die easily. I'm not too mad about that. Wait, there's literally a warp forest right here. Whoa! Oh, that's a drop bear. That's a drop bear. Oh my god. Okay, the Nether is very... Oh my god, another one. Jeez. Oh my god. Oh my god. Okay, we're okay. Wait, there's 2 of them. My god. I backed off for a quick second to hopefully lose the aggro of at least some of the mobs that were attacking me, and then I made my way over to that warped forest I had just seen. And after only about a minute of walking around in that warped forest, I actually came across another fortress. Which is kind of crazy, because I had only been in the Nether for about 5 minutes now, but somehow had already found the 2 main things I was looking for. A single blaze had spawned outside of the fortress, so I killed it and got some blaze rods off of it. And then I made my way into the fortress to see if I could find a blaze spawner and maybe some nether warts. And once again, I only took a couple of steps into the fortress before finding the blaze spawner. And rather than just forcing myself to have to sit in this one location to farm any blaze rods I would ever need in this world, I decided instead that I could just make a quick trip back to my base and grab all the tools I would need to actually move this spawner, and later on put it into some sort of grinder in my base. And when I eventually made it back to my bunker, my Twitch chat also advised me to grab a boat, because it could be used to trap the Enderman and make it exponentially easier to farm pearls. I then went back to the fortress and grabbed the blaze spawner, and then spent some time walking around the warp forest and grinding pearls. I spent a little bit more time exploring, but unfortunately wasn't able to come across any sort of nether wart. But then while looking through recipes, I found out that I could actually use some magic to convert blaze rods directly into nether wart. And since I now had a literal blaze spawner in my possession, I figured getting a couple extra blaze rods to convert into wart wasn't going to be much of an issue. So I grabbed a little bit of soul sand for my eventual nether wart farm and made my way out of the Nether. And when I made it back to my bunker, I wasted no time at all, immediately getting the alchemy catalyst created and started turning blaze rods into nether wart. And then I turned my attention to getting a blaze grinder set up as my sort of last big project before I set out on my journey to the surface. And so to start, I spent part of day 168 and all of day 169 just setting up a big room where I could actually place the spawner down and, make the grinder. And by the next day, I actually already had a working blaze grinder going, but I decided I wanted to decorate this room because pretty much all of my bunker was just an ugly stone blob, so I figured I could at least make one room in the whole dang thing, at least look halfway decent. And my main block of choice for this design project was going to be nether brick, which usually would take a ton of time to get just because of all the smelting I would have to do. But I actually figured out how to set up this really cool lava fan smelter, which would basically smelt an entire stack in a super short amount of time. And then I spent the next 3 days just making things look nice. I did stick with the nether brick for the majority of the build, but I also ended up grabbing some deep slate from the lower part of the caves because someone in my chat suggested that it would accent the nether brick really nicely. And I gotta say, I think this room turned out awesome. I am usually a terrible builder. I mean, you can probably tell my entire base is an ugly stone bunker, but I am super proud of this room. I just think it looks so good. Anyways, the next day I wanted to get my little nether wart farm set up, and I figured I could tie it into my blaze room by making the nether wart farm an entrance of sorts to that blaze grinder. And so I did exactly that. I set up a small area of soul sand where I could actually plant the nether wart, and then for the rest of the room just built with that deep slate tile so that it kind of flowed naturally into the blaze grinder build. And with that essentially marking the completion of the blaze grinder, it was time to transition to my biggest mission yet, my journey to the surface. And to start, I figured one of the most helpful things I could make for myself at this point would be potions, and in particular, strength 2 potions. So I set up a little alchemy area by that nether wart farm I had just made and started brewing. Initially though, I forgot that you can't use both redstone and glowstone on potions and accidentally made the wrong type of potion. But the next day I was able to fix that mistake and finally had brewed myself some strength 2 pots. In addition to that, I also made myself a couple of extra backpacks because during my time exploring the caves, I was constantly running out of inventory space, so I just didn't want that to happen while I was on the surface. And next up was quite possibly the most important item of all, called the Waystones, and that's actually where those ender pearls I was farming earlier come into play. Because by placing these handy little things at different important locations, you can teleport between them instantly at any time. So if I just set one up inside of my bunker and kept another one on me in my inventory and then happened to travel, 2,000 blocks away, I could just place it down wherever I ended up and instantly teleport back to my base whenever I wanted to. Each one does require 4 ender pearls to craft though, but since I was able to farm in the warp forest, that wasn't going to be a problem at all. And as a bit of final preparation, I also max enchanted a bow in case I needed to resort to ranged combat for some reason. And then on day 180, I set out into the blizzard. And I did quite a bit of walking before I came across anything even remotely interesting. As I crossed this ocean biome though, I heard some very creepy sounds coming from below me, so I decided to dig down and investigate. And those creepy sounds were seemingly coming from this shark with a glowing blue tail. I took a couple of shots at him with my bow, but because I was using the extendo grip, it was kind of awkward to aim and I missed all of them. I thought that maybe though, missing all of those shots was a sign from above that I shouldn't mess with this guy, so I swam up and continued on with my exploration. And a bit later that day, I stumbled across this pig that looked a little out of the ordinary. But I think in a good way, this frozen pig looks pretty sick to me. So I made use of my new waystones and actually teleported this snow pig back to my bunker with me. The next day, as I continued to wander around in the blizzard, I noticed that behind my temperature bar, some sort of weird named boss bar had appeared. And for those of you unfamiliar with this world, you likely will have no idea what that says behind there, but I immediately did. And it said, Frostmaw, who is a terrifying Yeti-esque creature that roams these snowy lands. And I was gonna take him out. I first had to actually find him though, because his health bar popping up just meant he was somewhere within a general radius of me. And after spending all of day 182 just aimlessly walking around in that area looking for him, I decided I needed to employ a better strategy if I wanted to actually find this guy. So the next day, I employed a triangulation strategy by setting waypoints every time the boss bar would pop in or out of vision. And this strategy worked out very quickly, and I found him, just sleeping away on top of that cliffside. For now though, I decided to just set up a waystone here and return in a couple of days when I felt more prepared for what I assumed would be a very tough battle. As I continued to explore on the next day, I came across this massive mansion that was just filled with mobs. And while that probably should have terrified me considering this is a hardcore world, it actually did the exact opposite and got me super hyped because I knew a place with this many mobs was gonna have to have some crazy loot. And I knew that at this point, my gear was pretty powerful. So even though there were a lot of these mobs, they were mostly lower level. And as long as I took my time, I should be able to pretty easily take all of them on. So I slowly made my way through the first floor of the mansion, making sure to break each mob spawner as I passed it. And when I got up to that second floor, I found the crazy loot I had been looking for. Yo! Oh my god! Oh my god! This place is loaded. Oh my god. Oh my god. Netherite ingots! 3 netherite! 5 emerald ore? Oh my god, you guys. A block of emerald. There was so much OP loot inside of this mansion that I had to literally set up a waypoint and take multiple trips back and forth just to bring these couple chests of good loot back to my base. By the next day, I still hadn't even fully cleared the place out yet, but before I did, I wanted to take advantage of some of the loot I had gotten. Because if you remember those animal cocoons that I've been using somewhat frequently throughout this entire video, those can actually be combined with emeralds to spawn villagers. Because each time you use an emerald on the cocoon, it gives it a plus 5% chance to spawn a villager. Which means that if you use 20 emeralds on it, you can actually guarantee that the cocoon will spawn a villager. And after looting those chests at the mansion, I now had a total of 19 emeralds, meaning if I used all of those on a cocoon, I would have a 95% chance to spawn a villager. Now, there was always that 5% chance that everything goes horribly, horribly wrong and I regret that decision forever. But what fun would life be without a little bit of gambling? So I placed down the cocoon, popped 19 emeralds into it, and just hoped for the best. And boom, we actually got the villager. Thankfully, if that had somehow gone wrong, I would have honestly felt like I was cursed. Anyway, the next day I went back to continue looting out the rest of that mansion, honestly thinking that I had probably gotten all the good loot out of there, but I found even more crazy stuff. For one, I found a full block of Moonstone just like hanging from the ceiling of one of the rooms. Like, what? And in one of the other loot chests I found, there were 3 corrupted eyes, which are one of the components to opening up the end portal in this mod because it's completely custom and kind of crazy. If you guys would like to see me go there though, make sure you leave a like for 300 days. After I had finished looting though, I teleported back to my bunker and found my villager fully grown. As I was discussing with my chat though, what we thought would be the best possible occupation for him, he must have made his way to the front of my base and yeeted himself into the lava. Because I'm not kidding you, I looked everywhere and he was nowhere to be found. I actually spent like 10 minutes searching for him and nothing. He was definitely just gone. So either he just randomly despawned or like I said, he more than likely yeeted himself into the lava. It's pretty sad, but you know, what am I gonna do about it now? And yeah, after losing my villager that I had just wasted 19 emeralds on, I was a little bit upset, but I figured I'd go ahead and channel that anger and finally take on Frostmaw. So over the next 4 days, I did a bunch of random stuff, just trying to get a couple of extra hearts, testing out some random battle strategies, and even brewing some regen 2 potions just in case. But then on day 192, I teleported back to Frostmaw's den, ready to take him on. And as you may have just noticed, I even brought my cockatrice with me as battle support. But my cockatrice kind of ruined the element of surprise for us. There he is. Oh, the cockatrice already started firing. Oh my god. All right. It's time. Oh god. Okay. He hit me with his blast already. Oh Jesus, I'm frozen. I can't move. Okay. Oh, the cockatrice is on fire. Oh my god, where's he at? Jeez, okay, I'm gonna unlead him. Oh my god. Okay, there we go. Oh my god, I'm annihilating him. Oh, he's doing some damage to me. Bro, my sword is so good. He stands no chance. My cockatrice is dead. Rip the cockatrice. I dominated. Oh wait, okay, I want to eat. I'm kind of scared. No, I don't want to eat that. I'll eat this. I'll eat this. Gain some extra hearts back. Oh my god, I even had the wrong hat on. Oh my god. Wait, wait, this zombie took the thing. That zombie took my item. There it is. The ice crystal. Oh my god, dude. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I knew my gear was pretty strong, but holy crap, Frostmaw never stood a chance at all. I completely destroyed that poor guy. But yeah, as you guys probably noticed there, Frostmaw dropped this item called the Ice Crystal, which has an awesome ability that lets you freeze your enemies in place, which I imagine is going to be a very, very useful item for me to add to my combat arsenal. As I continued to explore the area around where Frostmaw had fallen though, I noticed that the fog around me was starting to get less and less dense. It was almost as if Frostmaw's mere presence was part of the reason that it was so hard to see in this world. And now that he was gone, it might suddenly be a little bit easier to navigate this frozen wasteland. With this new increased visibility, I even managed to stumble across a small igloo that had a villager and a zombie villager down in the basement. I didn't have the means to transport these guys anywhere yet, but maybe I could make use of them very, very soon. For now though, that is where my journey is going to leave off. So if you guys want to see a 300 days, make sure you drop a like on this video and subscribe to my channel. Also, remember to check out Frag Pro Shooter. The game is 100% free to download on your mobile devices, so it's a super easy way to help support me and my channel and help me continue to make more videos like these.